God has returned in Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. We are having a video today discussing Arceus and every single Arceus form in Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl BDSP Ubers. So if you guys enjoy this one, leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more content. Also, comment down below what's your favorite Arceus form to played BDSP Ubers in recent times, and what your least favorite form is. What do you agree or disagree about what I've said about certain forms and how you use certain forms? I'd like to hear back from you guys. But yes, the creator has returned in all of his glory to actually revive BDSP. Because BDSP Ubers was a pretty dead meta game pre-Arceus, and now more people are trying to get back into it. Even Ubers off want to play BDSP Ubers again because they just abandoned their tier. But regardless, we are going to be going through all of the Arceus forms, all 18 of them. I mean, some will get more attention than others because some forms are just bad. Even in this really less power crept meta of BDSP, there are still some forms that are just completely unviable. But overall, I would say even those bad forms aren't even that bad. They're just horribly outclassed by the better forms, you know. So yeah, let's look into Arceus now. We're gonna start off with the best forms of Arceus, obviously, and move our way down from there. Timestamps will be in the description. But yeah, let's start off with the original, the Alpha, Arceus Normal, the one that isn't confined by his item or plate and can pretty much run any item it wants. But yeah, aka E-Killer. Let me just type E-Killer. E-Killer, the greatest and probably my most favorite Arceus form used across all of the generations because it is just so strong. Honestly, if you guys didn't know what Arceus E-Killer does, it's the combination of Swords Dance plus its stab option Extreme Speed. It's the only Arceus form that's able to really pull this off efficiently because it actually gets stab off Extreme Speed. The fact that Extreme Speed is also +2 priority, which means +1 priority moves like Quick Attack, Mach Punch, Sucker Punch, they all go after Extreme Speed. So it makes Arceus very threatening and very hard to handle offensively as well, to check offensively as well, because obviously Extreme Speed are +2. Even if you're faster than Arceus, which Arceus already has a massive speed to 120. Faster Pokemon like Darkrai, which will come out eventually in April, Shaman Sky, Deoxys eventually, I hope, and even yeah, just anything faster, Mewtwo for example, you're just able to threaten those because Extreme Speed will go before any of their moves. So that's why Arceus Normal is so threatening. Normal Stab is also like, it's not strong against anything. Of course, Normal has no type it's strong against, but obviously it has very few resistances. Only resisted by Rock, Steel, and Ghost is immune to Normal, and Normal also shares immunity to Ghost, so they're just mutual in that aspect. But yeah, looking at Arceus Normal checks, it's very hard to find checks to this Pokemon defensively because Arceus has a very huge move pool. God has a very huge move pool. It has Earthquake and it has Shadow Claw. So do you hear what I just said about the resistances earlier? Rock, Steel, and Ghost? Well, Earthquake hits Rock and Steel type super effectively, and Shadow Claw hits Ghost type super effectively. So realistically, E-Killer is just able to like get past his checks very, very easily, and like it just does a very good job at doing so. So obviously, what does Earthquake hit in the tier that super effectively? Dialga, which obviously resists Extreme Speed. Shadow Claw hits Giratina forms. It hits. I mean, Gengar's also hit by Shadow Claw now because it lost I mean, it's hit by Earthquake now because it lost Levitate. But yes, Gengar is also hit by your 2 coverage moves. What else? That's it in Ubers, really. Arceus Steel. Yes, another Arceus form that we'll get on to talking about very soon. But yes, Earthquake hits that super effectively as well. Arceus Rock as well. So Arceus E-Killer is just probably the strongest form in Ubers by a decent margin, in my opinion. Offensively, is probably the most threatening Pokemon in Ubers, like behind like Mewtwo or something. Like, it's just crazy how like good this mon is, and it doesn't even need to do anything else. In terms of EVs, I mean, in terms of EVs, I'm not like focusing too much on EVs because Arceus is very versatile depending on what you want to do, as you'll see with later forms where I discuss offensive and defensive sets. But either way, like, you don't need any speed on Arceus E-Killer, to be honest. Like, you can just go max HP to, you know, make yourself even more bulkier. Max attack, obviously. I've seen some spreads with like 240 HP, 16 speed. I don't really know what this does, but if you go on like Smog decks for like original Gen 4 or even Gen 5 or Gen 6, like you just see even spreads. All you need is like max attack adamant nature, and you can put EVs in whatever the hell you want to. Preferably HP, because again, as I said, you don't really need the speed when your stab option just nullifies speed tiers. So like, yeah, it's crazy. And in terms of item, as I said, this is the only Arceus form that can run any item. So most people have decided to run the likes of Silk Scarf, which obviously boosts E-Speed's power by 1.2 times, which is basically like a plate for Arceus Normal, because if you look at the other plates, they obviously boost their respective typings by 1.2 times as well. So Silk Scarf is basically like a plate for Arceus E-Killer. Also, you can run Life Orb, but I don't really recommend Life Orb too much, because again, this Arceus kind of needs these 2 slots and can't run Recover like other Arceus sets can when they decide to run like Calm Mind or other specific forms that use Swords Dance as well. And then I suppose Choppleberry, I suppose I suppose twice for some reason, but either way, Choppleberry handles its only weakness in the tier, which is fighting. Can kind of make you like beat Arceus Fighting 1v1, for example, even something like a Blaziken that has a speed boost but no like SD up or something. But again, it's not like a tier as you see in layout Ubers where you're just filled with fighting types like Marshadow, where like Gen 8 you can run Choppleberry more often, but Marshadow outspeeds you. But yeah, that is it for Arceus E-Killer, to be honest. One of the best, probably the best form in Ubers in my opinion and stuff. So yeah, moving on to the next form, we're going to discuss Arceus Dark. Now, you probably weren't expecting to hear Arceus Dark in terms of actual like Arceus form, but like maybe you're used to playing Swish Ubers or like Sun and Moon Ubers, where Arceus Dark isn't really too relevant because you have ones like Evolto in those tiers which just kind of outclass, and there's just better Arceus forms than Arceus Dark. But in BDSP, Arceus Dark is probably up there for very good reason, honestly. It checks the mighty Mewtwo. Now, Mewtwo is probably one of the most deadliest Pokemon in Ubers. It is the fastest unboosted Pokemon at 130 base speed. It has Nasty Plot to boost its already gargantuan special attack stat up to at least 814. Decide to go timid, and you should be timid Mewtwo anyway, because modest is the unset. But yeah, Arceus Dark is able to check that somewhat. Obviously, Mewtwo has extremely good coverage options and Focus Blast, which obviously Arceus Dark will fold to at +2. But regardless, if Mewtwo isn't set up or you're a bulky set, you can handle it. You know, I think you Oko with Judgment, like 0 special attack, you Oko with Judgment, and then stuff like that. Or even if you face Calm Mind Mewtwo, which obviously at +1, like Focus Blast may not kill you if you're bulky, and then just kind of deal with that. So what else does Arceus Dark do other than check the mighty Mewtwo to a certain extent? It also checks Giratina forms, and Giratina, let's talk about Giratina altered form, which is the 6-legged one. Obviously you're able to check this one because you're a dark type and it's a ghost type. Obviously Giratina can like Will-O-Wisp or T-Wave you, and Arceus did lose Refresh, which if you guys don't know what Refresh does, Refresh basically gets rid of all status conditions on that Pokemon that uses the move. But yeah, so obviously Giratina altered can obviously cripple you with status, but either way, you threaten mighty damage with your Stab Judgment, which does a lot of damage to Giratina, obviously. And yeah, you're just good versus it. Like Calm Mind, this thing will honestly just destroy Giratina, and even Giratina Origin, which is the less bulkier form. Like I think at +1, you know, Judgment just kills this very easily. And also in terms of the other ghost types that are relevant in Ubers, you obviously have Arceus Ghost, which I'll be talking about later as well. But yeah, being able to check the ghost types, being able to check the Mewtwo is very solid in Arceus Dark's case, and yeah, that's why it's one of the top Arceus forms, because like all of these threats that are everywhere now, Arceus Dark has a very good matchup against them. In terms of EVs, just invest in bulk. Obviously, I think there was a spread I was using earlier. I'll show you guys. I made the Arceus Dark team. Oh, yeah, that's the thing. I don't title my team, so I don't know which team it is. Honestly, like it's crazy. I think it's this one that user sent me earlier. But yeah, this one was just max HP, max speed. I've seen more bulkier spreads. So yeah, you can just decide. I don't think you should be invested in the bulk, honestly. And even like as I mentioned earlier with Mewtwo, like Mewtwo might not even be running Focus Blast because some people don't like missing 70% accurate moves, and obviously Mewtwo has Aura Sphere, which never misses and is significantly weaker than Focus Blast. So even that, you just check it even better if it's Aura Sphere. So yeah, that's why Arceus Dark is up there with Arceus E-Killer. Now the next one I'm going to talk about in terms of Arceus forms is Arceus Ghost. Arceus Ghost? You're probably thinking, isn't Arceus Ghost just an inferior version of Dark? Dark also checks Arceus Ghost as well. Now, I'll tell you why Arceus Ghost has some qualities that Dark does not have. Obviously, Ghost and Dark are not the same typing. They may have similar offensive capabilities, but defensively, Ghost is superior. Obviously, Ghost has an immunity to normal, and see the best Arceus form here, Arceus Normal. So obviously, you can somewhat check Arceus Killer with obviously has Shadow Claw, but you know you can still check it if it clicks E-Speed. You can like switch in once on the E-Speed and just like kind of threaten it out, I suppose. Obviously your Stab Judgment or your SD Shadow Claw won't be hitting Arceus Killer, but if you go Calm Mind Judgment, you obviously have access to Focus Blast, which is super effective against Arceus Killer. So that's all you need. Ghost Fighting, as we all know in recent times, the likes of Marshadow, the likes of Gengar and BDSP, Ghost Fighting has 0 resistances in this metagame. Obviously, the likes of normal Ghost resist Ghost Fighting, but we don't have a Hisuian Zoroark in BDSP. So Ghost Fighting goes unresisted, and yeah, you're able to check Arceus Killer with the Focus Blast with Judgment as well. So this is one set you can run with Arceus Ghost, the CM Judgment. Most of these Arceus forms can run CM Judgment, other than really Arceus Killer, and get away with it pretty well. Also, you have SD Arceus and Arceus Ghost. It lost Shadow Force, and if you guys didn't know, Arceus did get the signature moves of its Creation Trio in an event in earlier generations where it had Spatial Rend, War of Time, and Shadow Force, but you don't have that anymore because Pokemon Home doesn't allow transfers right now. So unfortunately, this set has gotten weaker in time. Like Shadow Claw is not the strongest stab, base 70 with the likes of Ubers Pokemon, which health on average is above 100 at least, and then having defense stats on average around 100 as well. So like you're definitely weak as a Swords Dance set, and I wouldn't recommend using SD Arceus Ghost because you know there's just better SD forms that I'll be talking about later as well. But yeah, you still get away with like running these sort of moves and then like recover, I guess, or like Earthquake if you want to hit something like the Yoga a bit harder than Brick Break, I suppose. But yeah, that is it for Arceus Ghost. Really, like you're probably still thinking is inferior Arceus Dark, but I think the defensive qualities that Arceus Ghost brings to the table, plus the fact that it can run an SD set which is more versatile than what Arceus Dark can do, is definitely something you should be looking at. The next Arceus form I want to mention as well is probably the Bastion, the huge castle, God's most defensive form. We have Arceus Steel. Now, Arceus Steel has always been consistently one of the better Arceus forms because Steel defensively is a very good typing. It is the best defensive typing on its own. It has 11 resistances. I'm including Poison as the resistance there. To Bug, Dragon, Fairy, Flying, Grass, Ice, Normal, Psychic, Rock, Steel, and the immunity to Poison, of course. So obviously, in terms of defensiveness, Arceus Steel is above all else in terms of the Arceus form's defensive typing. Also, it checks the dragons, the very few dragons we do have now because of the power creep meta, but being able to check something like Rayquaza, something like Banded Rayquaza, which can just click Dragon Ascent for days, is insane. Checking Palkia, spamming Draco Meteor, Dialga, spamming Draco Meteor, Giratina Origin, even doing some Dragon stuff. I think this gets Draco. Yeah, it does get Draco. So yeah, that spamming Draco as well. Being able to check Shaman Sky, which honestly is more annoying than you think, you know. Like, you face Shaman Sky, it has the second highest speed tier behind Mewtwo, and you just start flinching everything. And obviously Flying, like, we don't have much Flying resist outside of Arceus Steel, of course, Dialga, Arceus Rock, which again just gets nuked by Seed Flare. If you forget that this one has Grass Stab as well. So yeah, being able to check really threatening Pokemon like that is scary as well. Mewtwo as well, somewhat. Obviously, it has always feared Focus Blast if you decide to run the, you know, less accurate option, and obviously will just die at +2. But being able to just check so many of those deadly Ubers Pokemon is just insane. Also checking Ecola as well, stab-wise. So what does Arceus Steel run? Now, Arceus Steel, defensive Arceus sets in general just got worse in BDSP because you lost Toxic, you lost Refresh, you know? So you can't really like put things on timers, but you still have access to recover. You still have defog attempts. Now, I haven't really ran defog Arceus forms yet, but defog is always an option on more defensive sets. You can obviously just go to Calm Mind Judgment, recover, and then coverage option. Like, this could just be any slot. Ice Beam, I suppose, or, you know, Fire Blast to hit opposing Arceus Steel. You know, it still hits Dialga neutrally as well. So, yeah, once you set up CM, it's very hard to revenge kill you because, again, Steel typing only has 3 weaknesses, 10 resists, you know, like, it's just very tough to break down, and that's why Arceus Steel is the best defensive Arceus form. Moving on, so we're gonna move on to so I'm gonna title this the best Arceus forms. Like, these are the top of the crop, you know, you can't go wrong using any of these Arceus forms. Probably the most common Arceus forms you'll see around as well. Now, the next ones I'm going to get onto are the forms that aren't bad. Like, these forms aren't bad, and they're not generally outclassed by the best forms. They're still solid forms, the good forms. You can build teams around them and stuff and still be very successful, but they aren't the cream of the crop. These are God's, like, less powerful forms. Like, you can get away with running them, but it won't be too bad. Now, the first one I want to talk about is Arceus Dragon. Now, I don't think anyone has really discussed Arceus Dragon at all, which is insane, honestly, because looking at all of the other dragon types available in Ubers, Dialga, Giratina forms, you have Palkia and Rayquaza. You think about how these Pokemon are some of the top Pokemon in Ubers for their defensive qualities and their extreme offensive qualities, at least excluding Giratina altered form. So, what does Arceus Dragon offer over those guys? Now, Arceus Dragon is the fastest dragon of them. Palkia is only at base 100, Rayquaza is at 95, and both Giratina forms and Dialga are at base 90. So having base 120 speed is ridiculous on this Pokemon. Also, like, you're able to check those dragons as well, unless it's Scarf Palkia or Scarf Dialga or something. You can check those pretty efficiently. You're also a decent offensive Kyogre check. Now, you're not as good as Palkia when it comes to checking Kyogre, I guess, because Palkia has a quarter resistance to water based attacks, and Palkia is neutral to Thunder, which will hurt from spec sets, but Arceus Dragon is able to switch in on pretty much all moves other than Ice Beam. So it trades its Ice Beam weakness. Like, if you want to use it over Palkia, you get a Thunder resistance, but you're still hit by Ice Beam. But Palkia is hit by Thunder harder, but doesn't really care about Ice Beam that much. So yeah, there's pros and cons, but obviously Arceus Dragon can get away with a Calm Mind Judgment set. It's just been doing this forever, you know, like, all of these Arceus forms can run the Calm Mind Judgment set. In terms of the last move, I suppose Fire Blast to hit Steel types like Sizzle, which Sizzle is relatively common. Fire Blast also hits Arceus Steel, which is one of only like 2 switch-ins that are like in Ubers that can switch into Judgment, because you have Arceus Fairy, which is immune to Judgment, and Arceus Steel, which resists it. So you can run Fire Blast, or I suppose Ice Beam. Dragon Fire is pretty unresisted in BDSP metas. Like, there's not that many Pokemon that resist that, and yeah, just run like pretty much the same EV spread, like HP invested, some speed, I suppose. Now, Arceus Dragon also has an SD set, which was pretty strong in earlier generations like Gen 5 and Gen 6, because you had Swords Dance and you had Outrage, but unfortunately in BDSP, Arceus does not have access to Outrage. So you have to make do with Dragon Claw, which isn't in the same situation as Arceus Ghost using Shadow Claw, because Dragon Claw is 10 base power higher, but it's still relatively a weak move. Like, but if you get the super effective hit, it will just kill the dragons like very easily. Like, Palkia will drop to Dragon Claw. Even +0 Palkia will drop to Dragon Claw. Is just very easy. You run Earthquake, and then I suppose you can run Recover or like Stonage for like Ho-Oh or something, or like Lugia, which will just kill it after Stealth Rock. So the last sort is very versatile. Obviously, Recover, you can never really go wrong with Recover, but Stab plus Earthquake is your bread and butter, obviously. But yeah, I'm not really digging the HP. You can go like Timid or Adamant as well. Like, yeah, so that's what Arceus Dragon is capable of. It's not at the top, but obviously Dragon Stab is very threatening if you don't have like Arceus Steel on your team, or Arceus Fairy, you know, because that's the only viable fairy, like, other than like Clef. But even then, Clef isn't really used that much in Arceus Fairy. But if you use Arceus Fairy, you're not using another Arceus form, you know, so there's always that trade-off, you know? So yeah. Now I'm gonna share this spot with 2 Arceus forms. we have Arceus Electric, and we have Arceus Ice. Now, I have to actually name these, so I don't lose track of this. So I shall name this one Electric, and this is Ice. So just so we don't lose track of all of this. So Dragon was here, and Dragon was also here. So let's just move on to Arceus Electric and Ice. Now, the reason why I'm grouping these guys together is because they're very similar. They're very, very similar. They run Calm Mind, their respective judgment of their typing, obviously. Ice Beam, Recover. This is all you need on these guys. Calm Mind, their Stab, the respective other typings move. So you have Thunder or T-Bolt. Thunder, obviously, if you're using like a Kyogre on the same team, because Thunder is perfect. Accurate, Rain, and then Recover. Now, these guys are strong. Like, they are very good Calm Mind Arceus sets. Now, what holds them back from being at the top? Just like their general like presence in the tier, like they don't offer anything defensively really. Like Electric isn't the best defensive typing. You have like resistance to Steel, I suppose, and Flying, but like Flying is really too useful for you because you're going to be offensive anyway, so you're not investing in bulk. Arceus Ice, on the other hand, again, has the worst defensive typing because it only has a resistance to ice and just gets hit by everything neutrally, or like depending on his weaknesses as well. But the fact that these two are together in the same spot is because of their similar lack of defensive utility and their really strong offensive output. Obviously, Bolt Beam coverage is unresisted by mostly everything in Ubers. Like Rotom Frost obviously resists electric and ice, but Rotom Frost does not exist in Ubers. So you obviously get away with running Judgment Ice Beam, hitting everything in the tier for at least neutral damage. On one hand, Arceus Electric checks Kyogre well and Ho-Oh, because obviously your Stab Judgment will just destroy them when boosted. And of course, Arceus Ice can also like beat Kyogre with like Thunder, and Ho-Oh with Thunder with what do you call it? With boost. But at the same time, Arceus Ice doesn't have the immediate power to Oko Kyogre and Ho-Oh like Electric can, because of their because it doesn't get stabbed on Thunder, you know. And Ice also checks the dragons as well, like Giratina and you know, Rayquaza as well if you're going speed. So yeah, these guys are very good at what they do in terms of offense wise. They're really above like the other forms that I'll mention later, which aren't as good in terms of their CM sets. But yeah, this is what Arceus Ice and Arceus Electric offer to the table. Leading on from Arceus Ice and Arceus Electric, we do have Arceus Fighting. Now, Arceus Fighting is one I personally haven't used yet in Ubers, so it's just me kind of like speculating what it does in the metagame and what it's capable of doing. Because obviously Arceus Fighting, like defensively, Fighting doesn't really check anything relevant in the tier. Like defensively, like Fighting has like a resistance to Bug, I suppose. Like that's it really, and Rock. But yeah, it doesn't really have much many useful resistances. But offensive wise, Arceus Fighting does check a good amount in the tier. It checks Arceus Electric, it checks Dark Arceus, it checks Dialga, it checks Groudon even, because again, you go Judgment, Calm Mind Judgment, your coverage option, which is Ice Beam, which allows you to hit Groudon for super effective as well, plus something like Rayquaza, which is obviously a flying type, which you're weak to. You can easily just check that with Ice Beam and it will just drop. So yeah, and Recover as well. So it just, like, most of these Arceus forms do a similar thing, but it's just that they have different qualities that makes them worth the use, you know. So Arceus Fighting does have its check. It is able to check Ecola and Dark Arceus as well, plus Dialga as well, which are generally common Pokemon in Ubers right now, seen as Arceus has been free recently. So yeah, other than that, you know, that this is what Arceus Fighting does. Like, there's not much else to really say about it. It doesn't really have like close combat for you to really pull off an SD set well. Like, its stab is just too weak to do so. Like, if Arceus Fighting had CC, then SD would be a set, and then, you know, it'll just be very scary. But like, you're just better off running CM Judgment and Ice Beam to just hit like bulky things like Groudon harder as well. So yeah, that's it for Arceus Fighting. Moving on to Arceus Ground, actually. I'm surprised I'm speaking about Ground so late, because Ground has been one of the better Arceus forms, especially in like Sun Moon Ubers. because it was able to check Primal Groudon. But obviously, there's no Primal Groudon. Groudon doesn't keep its fire typing in its original form, so Arceus Ground doesn't check Groudon as well as it used to do, but it does check Dialga properly, it does check Rayquaza with bulk, and it can check Groudon again as long as it's bulky, because Groudon is still strong, it still has Precipice Blades, and at +2 you're taking a lot of damage from Precipice Blades. So, bulky Arceus Ground support set, defog I suppose. It did lose Toxic. Again, these bulky Arceus sets did take a hit by losing Toxic. But you can run Defog. You can even run your own Calm Mind Judgment of your own. Potentially even run like Stone Edge on this to like just get the Edgequake combination off and like Oko Ho-Oh. Because if you're not running Stone Edge, Ho-Oh does check you reliably. And of course, Ho-Oh does have Toxic Evil, but at the same time, something like Sacred Fire, which will burn you. You don't have any passive recovery with leftovers because you're holding the plate, obviously, and yeah, no refresh. So Ho-Oh does check you, so that's why I do suggest like Stone Edge on the CM set just to nuke Ho-Oh. And it's even worse now that Ho-Oh has to be careful of Stealth Rocks because there's no heavy duty boots, so it just takes 50 every time it comes in. So yeah, that's what Arceus Ground offers to the table, and is basically not my favorite Arceus form to use. I do think the other forms are slightly more consistent in what they do, but another set that Arceus Fighting, not Arceus Fighting, Arceus Ground can run. Oops, I forgot to select BDSP here. Arceus Ground. SD, it still has a very threatening SD set, which is probably his better set, to be honest. I don't think CM really fits Arceus Ground too much because you have Stone Edge Earthquake. This is all you need. Your Earthquake's going to be hitting really hard. Like, it's basically your physical judgment because of you know, Earthquake boosting ground moves by 1.2 times. So yeah, this is all you need. Recover, and yeah, you're basically set to go. This is Arceus Ground in a nutshell. You know, very threatening Pokemon to face. You know, so yeah, Stone Edge lets you hit flying types, which obviously immune to your ground stab. Rayquaza dies, Ho-Oh dies. Arceus Flying, if you see that, just dies. Shaman Sky outspeeds you, but it can't really switch in. Like, if it tries to switch in on like an Earthquake, which again, I don't think switching in Shaman on such a ballsy play like that is the play, but yeah, if you try and do that, Shaman Sky just kind of dies. So yeah, that's it for Arceus Ground, to be honest. It is a decent form. I do think, you know, what do you call it, SD is the superior set over CM, but also its defensive set being able to check threats like Rayquaza as well is a pretty big boost. Because again, Rayquaza is just scary, man. Like, in the original DPP, it didn't have any reliable physical flying move, but now that it has Dragon Ascent, which is basically flying CC, is just very hard to handle defensively. So yeah, so Arceus Water, probably one of the better defensive Arceus forms as well, because Water is just so nice to check things like Groudon, Kyogre. You can check you know, Ground Arceus as well, which I just talked about as well. And yeah, Arceus Water can get away with Defog. Again, losing Toxic sucks, but what can you do about it? Then you can have like Raw or something. I haven't really shown what what support Arceus really runs, but it's something along the lines of your Judgment, Defog, Raw, Thunder Wave, I suppose. That this is all you need, or even Stealth Rocks. I don't think Stealth Rock is really the play on Arceus Water, but at this point, any like Arceus form can run Stealth Rock and get away with it, and then maybe instead of having like the Groudon designated for Stealth Rock, you can just run like Double Dance Groudon, for example, and get away with doing that. So something like this is all you really need in terms of a set for Arceus Water here as a defensive support Pokemon. Obviously, you can get away with running CM Judgment. Again, like CM Judgment is just ridiculous. I think you can afford, in terms of CM Judgment, actually, Calm Mind, Judgment, Recover, and then the last move. What does Water need to hit? Like, Water Ice is decent. I think Water Ice hits everything. Like, Water is resisted by itself. Obviously, you're walled by your own Water type, you're walled by Kyogre, but at that point, I don't think Kyogre beats you in a 1v1 anyway, unless it decides to lock itself into Thunder. It kind of has to paralyze you to, like, kind of cheese you. At the end of the day, I think if Arceus Water gets enough CM boost, I don't think it really matters that Kyogre resists Water Ice, you know. So yeah, so its defensive quality of checking Kyogre, Groudon, It is one of the bulkier forms. It can get away with it because water is pretty nice defensive typing as well. So yeah, that's what Arceus Water's role in Ubers is. So yeah, that's it for water. So the next one, Arceus Fairy, which the team builder says is illegal, but don't worry guys, if you validate your team, you'll be able to use Arceus Fairy. So Arceus Fairy, the newest Arceus form in this BDSP meta. Arceus Fairy did not exist in Diamond and Pearl because Fairy types didn't exist back then. So how does this Pokemon fare in this Gen 4 remastered metagame with Ubers? Now, this has changed, like Ubers, comparing DVP Ubers to BDSP, it's just so crazy because again, Arceus was banned in Gen 4 Ubers while it's here for now in BDSP. So how well does Arceus Fairy do? Now, I'll say Arceus Fairy is pretty good. Or honestly, it is. It has the qualities to be good. Like Fairy is one of the best typings in the whole game. It's the Dragon check because you're immune to every Dragon move, really. You're also able to check Dark Arceus and Fighting Arceus pretty well because obviously you have Stab Judgment that just destroys them. And Dark Arceus being super common because of being able to check Mewtwo, like I stated earlier. So yeah, gets away with doing the same shenanigans, you know, Calm Mind Judgment. Fairy's resisted by Fire, Poison, Steel. I think that's it really. So it is really strong. I guess you can run Earth Power, Fairy Ground. I don't know. Earth Power sounds like the play to get what do you call it? Or even Fire Blast. Fire Blast is the better play because again, fire types aren't really too common in what do you call it, Ubers. But Judgment, Fire Blast, Recover, I think that should hit everything pretty well. It gets Arceus Steel. It gets it. I mean, Judgment already hits Dialga pretty hard as well. Hits the dragons, and yeah, I think Judgment, Fire Blast should work efficiently. And yeah, that's it. All it can run. I suppose support Arceus set with Defog can work as well because Fairy is good defensively. So Arceus Fairy, yeah, so it is good defensively. Not much else to say about Arceus Fairy. Give it a shot. I haven't used it yet, but I think it will be good. And the last one we're going to talk about for this specific section of the Arceus forms is Arceus Rock. Now, I was really debating upon Arceus Rock in like the next section. I'll talk about the Fallen Gods, you know, the Outclassed, the Forgotten, the Forsaken ones, obviously. But Arceus Rock does have some qualities that I have noted down. It is inferior to Arceus Steel as a defensive Pokemon, yet still has the power of checking Ho-Oh, checking Rayquaza. And yeah, in terms of its defensive role, just don't use it defensively. Like, Arceus Steel is just the superior option. Like, you do share the Flying, Normal, Poison, you know, resistance, but, you know, Arceus Steel has more than double the resistances of Arceus Rock. While Arceus Rock isn't weak to fire, again, what's fire here other than, like, Ho-Oh and Blaziken? Like, you don't really care. Like, you do check Ho-Oh, which Arceus Steel cannot do, but that's about it in terms of defensive profile. And yeah, you still just lose to Blaziken anyway, because Blaziken just has close combat, so like you don't even like check Blaziken anyway. Like, you just switch on the fire moves but die to the fighting moves. So what does Arceus do Rock do offensively that Steel can't do? Edgequake. That's it really. Edgequake. You can run Swords Dance, Stone Edge, Earthquakes. Like, again, that's outclassed by Ground because Ground has less weaknesses and has an immunity to Electric. But again, Rock doesn't share Ground's ice weakness. It doesn't have what do you call it? It resists fire, it resists flying, which Ground doesn't have. So again, Rock does seem outclassed by Ground and Steel wherever you go, but at the same time, it has its defensive qualities that Ground and Steel, the Ground specifically in terms of SD set doesn't have. So it is worth using. It is worth using. Like, Rock is hard to switch into, so I will give Arceus Rock the benefit of the doubt here. Now, moving on to the Forsaken ones, the forms of God that aren't great in the metagame or just aren't worth using. These will be the forgotten ones, you know, the ones that no one cares about, the ones that are just terribly outclassed in this metagame right now. We're going to start off with the best one out of all of them, in my opinion, which is Arceus Flying. Now, Arceus Flying, again, like, you're going to see a pattern with these Arceus forms I'm going to talk about now, is the fact that they're just not, there's just nothing that they do exceptionally well that other typings don't do, you know? Like, what does Arceus Flying offer to the table that makes it worth the Arceus slot. Because again, you can't run more than one Arceus due to species clause. So what are you doing with Arceus Flying that is honestly worth using? And there's not really that much, honestly. Like, Flying doesn't really check anything well efficiently. Like, you have a grass resist, you have a bug resist. That's about it. Like, you really don't check anything else. You have a ground immunity, which I suppose you can check what do you call it, CM Arceus Ground with, but again, that can just run Ice Beam, man. Just useless. So instead, what does Arceus Flying do? CM is still decent enough. This despite the fact that his defensive profile isn't that good. CM is good, or like decent in my opinion, because again, the flying resists aren't that common, you know. So if you look at what resists flying in Ubers, you have Arceus Electric, you have Arceus Rock, Steel, Dialga, and that's about it in terms of Ubers. You can have some OU mons here, maybe Tyranitar see some usage, Heatran, I guess, but these aren't common Ubers staples. So outside of the Ubers common staples, so they're not even going to be used. So it's only about 3 Pokemon that honestly can switch into Arceus Flying's Judgment CM. So it is, in terms of the Forsaken Arceus forms, the best attempt at CM, honestly, because the flying stab is just really good. So obviously, how do you get rid of that weakness? Run Earth Power. That's what you need. Like, Arceus Rock checks you, Arceus Electric checks you, Arceus Steel checks you. What hits all 3 of those? Earth Power. So it can be threatening if given the right opportunity to, and depending on the matchup, it can be threatening depending on what Arceus forms there are, or depending on the team structure that you're facing. But otherwise, it is just a bit inconsistent in what it does. They're just better Arceus forms to use in terms of CM. Arceus Electric and Ice have perfect coverage. Arceus Dragon has access to SD sets that make it a bit more versatile. Arceus Ghost and Dark, oh, those ones are just a bit more threatening. So there's that as well. So what's the next Forsaken one? The one that isn't that good. The next one I'm going to be talking about is Arceus Poison. Now, Arceus Poison again is in a similar situation as Arceus Flying, where Poison just isn't good in Ubers. Like, Poison is just bad. Like, Poison doesn't do anything. Offensively, Poison's useless. Like, the only thing that Poison is relevant against in Ubers is Arceus Fairy. Now, you're not going to be facing Arceus Fairy all the time, and not to say it's an uncommon Arceus form, but there are 18 of these bad boys, you know. Like, the odds of you facing, realistically, the odds of you facing one is 1 in 18, which isn't too high, honestly. So, but yeah, Poison is only super effective against Grass and Fairy. Again, like, Poison Stab isn't good. As I said, not that many, super effective things that it hits. It's just outclassed again by Arceus Electric and Ice, as CM users are outclassed by Arceus Ghost, you know. But defensively, that's what Poison is about. It was never about the offensive options of Poison as a type, and it was all about what Poison offers defensively. Now, what Poison offers defensively, obviously, outside of checking Arceus Fairy and Arceus Fighting, yeah, that's about it. Having a fighting resistance, having a fairy resistance, that's what Arceus Poison offers to the table. But unfortunately, it lost Toxic, which that it could guarantee land because it was a poison type. So that just makes its support sets a lot worse. You know, it is Mewtwo weak as well, and that's a really big one in my opinion, because Mewtwo is just so good. And like, when there's already limited checks and you can run like an Arceus like Dark, which somewhat checks Mewtwo, or have E-Killer Arceus have an SD set that can kill Mewtwo at +2. Why would you decide to use Poison? Why waste your Arceus slot on Poison when you can run Arceus Dark or even Arceus Ghost that can actually check Mewtwo, for example, and like make your team less susceptible to it, and just use Arceus Poison, which just makes your team more susceptible to Mewtwo, which is already very hard to handle defensively. So yeah, Arceus Poison not really worth using in my opinion. So moving on to the next one, Arceus Fire is in a very similar situation where defensively Fire doesn't offer anything to the table in Ubers other than checking something like Arceus Ice, I suppose, or like Arceus Grass, which I haven't talked about yet, or will we get talked about soon. But Fire is just not a relevant type in a tier like that has Kyogre, that has Palkia, you know, again that has dragons, and fire doesn't really have any useful resistances outside of itself, Fairy, like outside of Fairy. But again, as I just stated, Arceus Fairy can easily just run Earth Power to deal with Arceus Fire. Like, you're not even gonna be prepping for Arceus Fire. That's how irrelevant it is in terms of the BDSP Ubers landscape. But even offensively, where Fire can thrive, because Fire doesn't really have that many resistances. Like, in terms of resistances, Fire is resisted by Dragon, is resisted by Rock, is resisted by itself, and is resisted by Water. So, I lost count. 4 or 5 resistances that Fire has. You'd think, oh, offensively isn't actually that bad, you know, like, but it's just not needed. Like, you're running a Rock Weak Arceus form when you can be running something like Arceus Electric. Like, it's always going to be coming down to, why use this Arceus form when other ones are just better, you know? Like, why use Arceus Fire as a, you know, CM Arceus form when Arceus Electric and Ice, you know, have both beam combination. Arceus Dragon has a stab that's arguably better than Fire, obviously, because Dragon only has 2 types that can reliably switch into it. Arceus Dark, which just has a better matchup against the whole metagame as a whole, being able to check the ghost types, and Lugia, Mewtwo somewhat as well. So, yeah, Arceus Fire doesn't really have a space in the metagame. Even as a Fire type, I would rather use Blaziken, because Blaziken at least has Fighting, Stab, and it can threaten things like Dialga, you know, and other Arceus forms like Steel, Rock, Ice, Normal as well. Oh wait, never mind, normal just Okuzu. But yeah, so yeah, Arceus Fire does not really have a place at all in Ubers, in my opinion. You can try running it, but I don't think you'll really have that much success, you know. Like, it's not bad, it's just awfully outclassed, you know. So yeah, Arceus Grass, on the other hand, I would say his defensive profile is much better than Fire and Flying as well, because Arceus Grass is able to beat the weather duo of Kyogre and Groudon pretty efficiently, honestly. Obviously, Ice Beam will hit you really hard if it's specs, but Scarf, if you're running some bulk, you don't really care. And obviously, you're able to switch into Groudon's Precipice Blade, switch into Kyogre's Origin Pulse, Water Spout, Thunder, if it, like, you have Arceus Grass plus like Palkia, and like you make the predict, you know. So being able to do that, that's already better than what Fire has to offer at all to the table. So I probably should have talked about Grass versus Fire, but I think Grass's problem is really just inconsistency. Just like with Flying, it's just a very inconsistent Arceus form to use. It's very risky to use, because while you have the pros of checking things that are relatively common, Kyogre, Groudon, Ground Arceus, even Rock Arceus to a certain extent, like, you just don't do well against anything else. Like, really, like, compare yourself to the rest of the metagame. You're just like a sitting duck for something like Ho. The dragons don't really care about you. You know, Shaman Sky as well will just like blitz you. Rayquaza doesn't care unless like you're running Ice Beam. But yeah, I think Arceus Grass, like, it can run a defensive support set, which obviously will make a very solid check to the likes of like I just stated, Groudon, Kyogre, Ground Arceus, and that. But offensively, there's no reason to run it, and offensively means you're just losing to something like Sky Minis. You're losing to something like you're just gonna lose. Like, it's just not worth using, in my opinion. So there's just that going for it, you know. So yeah. So we have 2 Arceus forms left. 2 of the last Forsaken ones, the forms that are just horribly outclassed by the rest of them, and outclassed by pretty much any other mons in Ubers. The second to worst Arceus form, in my opinion, in terms of just its direct outclassedness, or just has no place in the metagame, is Arceus Psychic. Now, Arceus Psychic is outclassed by Mewtwo as an offensive Psychic type, because Mewtwo can run a CM set that's just even better than Arceus Psychic. Now, Arceus Psychic is more bulkier overall. Obviously, you have 120 in HP defense and special defense, while Mewtwo has like 106 HP, 90 defense, and yeah, 90. So it's not even as bulky, but like, Mewtwo's faster. Mewtwo has pretty much the same coverage options, or just slightly better. Like, Side Strike is better than Judgment, in my opinion, and also the fact that Mewtwo is just stronger. Like, 154 compared to 120 is just a significant you know, difference. Like, come look at this real quick. So that's 339. Mewtwo, on the other hand, reaches 407. Like, you see the difference here. Like, it's just not even worth discussing, really. So in terms of offense, there's no reason to use Arceus Psychic when Mewtwo is pretty much like number 1 or number 2 in Ubers exist. So what does Arceus Psychic offer defensively? Nothing. Really offers nothing. Psychic is probably one of the worst like singular typings defensively, because you really only have 2 resistances to yourself and fighting. One which like you can check Mewtwo kinda, but Mewtwo can run Shadow Ball and you don't really care. But at the same time, like, you live at least 1 Shadow Ball at +2 if you're bulky. You T-Wave and then like you just spam Recover versus it or something. But even then, it's just really inconsistent when you can run something like Arceus Dark, where like Mewtwo has to pick or choose running a 70% accurate move, or hitting like Earth Sphere and not killing, and then Judgment just OHKOing Mewtwo as well, or even Arceus Ghost, which won't die to Shadow Ball as well like Psychic, but you actually have to stab that OHKOs Mewtwo as well. So Arceus Psychic finds itself being outclassed by Ghost and Dark Arceus pretty easily. So what does Arceus Psychic actually have going for it? Really, really nothing. It just has nothing going for it. I can't even recommend using Arceus Psychic at all. Like, it really just doesn't do anything better than any Arceus form at all. Like CM, the ones I even mentioned, CM Flying is even more useful than Arceus Psychic, because at least Flying is a very strong, you know, offensive typing in Ubers, but Psychic just really does nothing, and it's a shame really, because like Arceus Psychic, like, I don't even know why I'm saying it's a shame. I mean, it has a cool color, right? That's all I can say really. Like, Arceus Psychic has a cool color on it, but yeah, Arceus Psychic just is awful, man. It's just, wow, it's bad, and it makes me sad to even be saying it, but it's just bad in Ubers. Like, it's awful. Like, why would you want to use this? It's just so bad. It's so outclassed. But yeah, moving on to our last Forsaken God, Arceus Bug. The one throughout the generations people have been saying, we should test this in OU to see how it is. It can't. It's the worst Arceus form. Like, there's no way it can be that broken in Ubers. In my opinion on that matter, I think Arceus Bug would be pretty stupid in like OU spaces. Honestly, like, the set versatility would just catch out a lot of OU Pokemon, and it's still an Arceus at the end of the day. Like, this thing would still be absolutely bonkers in an OU metagame. But regardless, we're speaking about Arceus Bug in BDSP. Now, as I just roasted Psychic for the last like 3 or 4 minutes, am I gonna roast Bug as hard? Not as much, honestly. I don't think I'm gonna roast Bug as hard, because Bug does have something it can do that Psychic just can't. It dreams about doing. It dreams about doing. Swords Dance, like Swords Dance Arceus Bug with X Scissor Stone Edge. This absolutely just hits everything. Like, Bug Rock, I think, hits everything. Like, you can run Recover or Earthquake, but the thing that Arceus Bug can do, you can catch out Ho-Oh. And I think that's pretty cool that at +2, if there's an Ho-Oh, is that if there's a Ho-Oh, you can just click Stone Edge and it will die. It is just really, really cool. But otherwise, Bug Stab is awful in Ubers. Like, I don't think anyone really needs to, we don't really need to discuss why Bug is an awful stab in Ubers. You have stuff like Arceus Steel, Dialga, Giratina. Like, Ghost Resistant Bug sucks. Ho-Oh, again, like, it just, like, can check Bug really, really well. Groudon doesn't really care about what this thing does. Stone Edge will to it here. Something like Rayquaza, Shaman Sky, like, you're weak to a lot of things, obviously, but like you still just have something you can do that's kind of unique. The fact that you can just nuke Ho-Oh in one, like, only something like Arceus Ground and Rock SD sets can really do that, because Arceus Dragon can't really run Stone Edge like that. But yeah, that's just one unique thing that Arceus Bug offers to the table. But otherwise, like, it's in the same position of Psychic, where why would you ever want to use this other than like the surprise factor or like memeing? Because like, really, these two are just absolute bottom tier Arceus forms, not worth using at all. So yeah, so that is it, guys. We have discussed all 18 Arceus forms. It was a long video, I know, but I didn't want to make separate videos for all of the Arceus forms, that'll just be 18 videos that I have in the backlog of my mind saying, oh, I need to make a video for Arceus Normal by next week or Arceus Water in a couple of days. It's better to just do it in one video, one sit through, you know, talk about all of these Arceus forms. But yeah, it is a fun time in BDSP Ubers now because, you know, I feel like the tier has been brought back to life, you know. Arceus has really brought the tier back to life. Whether it's broken or not in the tier, that's debatable, honestly, because the thing that E-Killer, for example, E-Killer is just stupid. But I don't know if we'd see if like any specific Arceus forms get banned anytime soon. I don't think Ubers have really discussed anything. Like they weren't discussing anything at all recently, like until Arceus came. They just abandoned this tier because like I don't really blame them. Ubers was kind of bad. Like it wasn't really too fun before Arceus came, but now the tier is in a completely different state than it was a couple of days ago, or even a week ago. And I'm happy that the tier has been brought back to life. And when we get newer things like Darkrai in like 2 weeks or something, or Deoxys eventually, I feel like the tier will be in a pretty good position, honestly. I feel like Darkrai will bring a new offensive threat to the tier, while Deoxys will honestly switch things up. But I think having something as big as Deoxys in BDSP Ubers is going to be massive, because you have things like speed. Speed Deoxys pretty much defined the league meta game in DPP Ubers because of its massive speed tier, got up hazards very, very reliably. We'll be doing the same thing again in Ubers. We'll have HO come back stronger than ever when Deoxys speed comes out. Defense as well. I think defense will be okay. Normal and attack Deoxys, I don't know. I think they'll push Mewtwo out of its king spot very easily, because Deoxys attack, while having the same, it's just faster. It may not have Mewtwo's bulk at all, but being faster and being significantly stronger is a huge one. And I even think Deoxys Normal, it will be in the same situation as something like Arceus Psychic and Bug, where it's not like, oh wait, never mind. Let me think of an example. Arceus Electric, for example, it'll be in the same position as those guys, where like they're good forms, but like they're just outclassed. Like Deoxys Normal is always outclassed by attack. So, but yeah, it'll definitely be better than Mewtwo in my opinion. But yeah, that's it for now, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Leave a like down below. Again, comment what your favorite Arceus form is and whatnot. If you agree or disagree with what I said in this video, or like what sort of sets would you use on these Arceus forms. But I do think Arceus is pretty one-dimensional, you know. But yeah, there's not much else to say. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.